Hola, muy buenas tardes. Good afternoon to everyone. Hoy estoy muy emocionado porque vamos a tener una charla con el doctor Michael Greger. Lo voy a decir todo en inglés para tratar de agilizar la conversación. Si alguien no habla inglés, puede poner sus preguntas, me las puede decir a mí y yo las voy a traducir al inglés o también las pueden poner en el chat. Entonces, bueno, le quiero dar la bienvenida. I'm welcoming Dr. Michael Greger. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. We watched many of your videos. You have so many, but specifically, we watched one that was 1 hour and a half,
Wow.
and it was basically talking about your latest book, How Not to Age. And I'm thrilled, very happy, and honored to have you with us. So, just sort of introduce you. Michael Greger, he's an American physician, author, speaker, and he's also a consultant in public health issues. And he's best known for his advocacy for whole food, plant-based diet. Michael is certainly a maverick in this area of plant-based nutrition. And you'll see why I chose that word if you haven't really heard him speak. So yeah, the dynamic for today, we have half an hour to discuss with him whatever we want. Basically, it will be a Q&A session. So please feel free to jump in, make your own questions, comments, and Michael will do his best to address them. So Michael, I don't know if you want to say anything before we start.
I'm just so excited to be here. I wish I could be there in person.
Great. Yeah, that's a good thing. So you were telling me before we started recording that you had a rally. You know, you're busier than Taylor Swift. 100 cities in 5 months. That's crazy, my friend. Um, and you were telling us about the program in Denmark that the
Oh,
government is supporting. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Because I think it's amazing.
yeah, it's really remarkable. So the government is has dedicated 100 million euros to the promotion of plant-based eating within the country. So they actually paid the Vegetarian Society of Denmark to bring me out and to speak. And I did these, huge, the biggest theater back-to-back sold out shows, thousands of people. I mean, at the little 7-Elevens, like the little convenience stores on every corner, have whole food, plant-based, have like lentils, and I mean, it was just mind-blowing. I feel it was like being in a country like 20 years in the future or something, and it's happening right now. And it's interesting, they're doing it for not for public health, they're doing it for climate. But hey, we don't care why people are eating healthier. We just want them to eat healthy. So yeah, so there's now a big push to get other European Union countries to kind of pony up and support their populations by supporting dietary change. And it's just super exciting. And hopefully we'll see more of that elsewhere.
Yeah, and it's great that planetary health is human health, and that's the great thing here. So if anyone wants to pose any questions, just raise your hand and you can turn on your own microphone. Um,
So
since I
if
don't
you
want,
don't
yeah,
mind, I would
yes,
like to make the first question. My,
Please.
so I bought the How Not to Die book during my first year of nutrition school back to 2016, and it completely changed my whole vision of nutrition. And the amount of research you do for each book is amazing. I mean, I don't know how you do it, but it's really amazing. So my question is, for this book, what was the most challenging chapter to research, to do the research, and why?
Well, it's not just me. I've got a whole team. We now have about how many people? It keeps changing. About 20 folks on staff. So we just brought on a new another nutrition PhD who's helping me do some of the research. And so we have fact checkers, and it's a big team effort. But in terms of this last book, yeah, How Not to Age was really the biggest research project we've ever taken on. 13,000 citations. It was just a monster. Probably the hardest to write was I think the microRNA chapter. microRNAs is this revolution in our understanding of the flow of genetic information, challenging the central dogma of biology. Everything we learned, right? It just got turned upside down. And it wasn't even discovered until after I graduated from medical school. So I had never even heard of microRNAs. And so it was really going from absolute scratch, no knowledge whatsoever, and then trying to, trying to get up to speed with a really hot new research topic. So that was probably the one that took the most effort. Whereas everything else, I maybe had done a few videos about it, at least I had a certain sense, and I just had to kind of update my information in terms of what's the latest. Whereas something like that, I just had, cellular senescence was another one that, something I just was not familiar with at all. And so, and it's just intimidating because you look at the literature, you do your first, PubMed search, and you're like, okay, so there's like 10,000 articles on new topic X. And you're just like, oh, where do you even start? But, you realize, look, you've done this before, and it always looks intimidating, always looks impossible, but you do it. I mean, it eventually turns out okay. You don't know that the first time, but eventually you figure it out. And so then you're like, all right, I've been here before, and it turned out great, so we just got to do it again.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Do you think that your next research project will use ChatGPT?
Probably not ChatGPT, but I do use a number of AI research tools, not for the writing, but for research. So they have access to some databases that just aren't, listed on the National Library of Medicine database, PubMed. And so you can get kind of a broader search, so they go into some of the social sciences literature, some of the nursing literature, some of the kind of gray literature, like, pick up PhD theses and stuff. And sometimes you can find some interesting information that isn't otherwise listed. But that's really the only use I've seen so far for my work in terms of AI. Just because, there's no problems with hallucination or anything. It says there's a paper, you click on the paper and see if it exists. Right? I mean, so it's like instantly you can verify the information. And when I did that with some, well-worn research topics, things that I really know what's in the literature, papers popped up I'd never even heard of. And that's all it took to totally win me over. I was like, okay, I'm sold, right? Because that's just gold. I find myself sometimes, I'll be researching an issue and really think I understand where it's going. And then all of a sudden there'll be one critical paper that changes, that I do a whole 180. And, I thought I'd recommend the supplement, and all of a sudden I'm not recommending a supplement. And I think to myself, oh my God, if I had not seen that one paper, I'd be telling people to take this supplement that no one should be taking, and so being able to have the broadest possible, search to pull up every possible, case report of adverse effects or whatever. Yeah, it's critically important. And some of the AI tools have really blown me away.
Wow. Yeah, that's the most courageous thing to do. Like really allow for contradicting information to come in and then try to make sense out of it. And I think that's very courageous because it takes a lot of time, energy, and thank you for doing it.
But that's the best part, right? I mean, I love finding out that I'm wrong. I love, I have this narrative in my mind that completely upends it. That's what keeps it interesting. That, I want to learn. I want to be right. I don't want, yeah, that's juicy stuff. In fact, it's funny. I was just looking, what was I? Oh, I'm doing a series on ultra processed foods. And they were using some acronym I wasn't familiar with. And I thought the acronym was like artificially sweetened beverages. And it turned out that there was some really positive benefit to artificially sweetened beverage in this study. And, I think someone with more confirmation bias would just kind of dismiss it all, but there's such overwhelming evidence otherwise. But I was like, oh my God, this totally, it was a really good study. And I was just like, totally, like my mind was spinning. Okay, well, we really got to step back, really look at this. And then I realized, oh yeah, I totally mixed up the acronym. It wasn't, and it was actually something that, I assume was good, but I loved how my brain was not dismissive. It was like, all right, maybe we should all be drinking Diet Coke. Let's go.
Yeah, that's something that I think that as we age, we lose that capacity, and the fact that you are regenerating that capacity, it's also a sign of anti-aging and how not to age philosophy. There's a question here from Jesus. He wants like a general opinion about supplements that are vitamins, like how to approach this topic of vitamins that we take as supplements.
Oh, so vitamins or non-vitamins?
Vitamins,
or just supplements in general.
Vitamins, supplements that are vitamins. Yeah,
that are vitamins. Well, so really, particularly, if we have a patient population, it's really on a person by person basis, right? And so, if we have a patient who's an alcoholic, we have a patient who's pregnant, we have a patient every kind of situation is different. We have a patient who's institutionalized, not getting any sun. We have a patient, and so it's really kind of on a case by case basis. So it's harder to make broad statements about supplementing. Because some supplements are deleterious. We know vitamin E supplements associated with slight increase in all-cause mortality. Same thing with beta carotene supplements. So we want to be really cautious. I think there's this knee-jerk kind of like, well, it's insurance, it can't hurt you, you might as well cover your bases. But when we actually see some of these really large randomized controlled trials, some of these supplements, which we would presume to be harmless, like beta carotene, vitamin E, actually turned out to hurt people. Increased prostate cancer rates with those randomized to vitamin E, for example. And so, these are not necessarily benign. And so we really should only be prescribing them or recommending them if we really do think the benefits outweigh the risks.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm waiting for more questions, and I have one also. So here in AMMEV, which is the Mexican Association of Lifestyle Medicine, our next Congress will happen next month in Mexico City. It's called Abracadabra. And one of the ideas of this Congress is to re-enchant the power of lifestyle, right? Because it's not only a prescription that your physician tells you, don't smoke and do exercise, and that's a boring thing. How to really re-enchant the narrative behind the most amazing things behind lifestyle, eating and moving and de-stressing. How do you approach this in your daily work? Because you sometimes bring news that people don't want to hear, right? So how also to make it fun and attractive so that it doesn't feel like Dr. Michael Greger is punishing you or telling you something that you don't want to hear.
Right. I think the most exciting things happening in lifestyle medicine, I think that really jazzes people up, gets people excited, is the reversal work. Prevention isn't sexy, right? When prevention works, nothing happens. Right? I mean, it's really hard to tell a patient, oh my God, great news. Something terrible did not happen to you. Right? I mean, but as physicians, similarly, prevention doesn't feel good. It's not like we have here's Javier again, still didn't have a stroke. Oh my God, that's awesome. Right? I mean, it's not very satisfying, but when Dr. Dean Ornish, for example, came along in 1990, published the Lifestyle Heart Trial, showing that the progression of heart disease could be reversed. Number one killer of men and women in North America could be reversed with a healthy enough plant-based diet and lifestyle. I mean, now that's exciting. That can get people juiced up. He just published a trial this year on reversing the progression of early stage Alzheimer's disease, right? That is something you could get someone excited about, eating healthier, because, and as physicians, it can reignite the spark of why we all went to medicine in the first place, right? If we wanted to, I don't know, make a lot of money, we get on a stock market or go into business or something. No, we went into medicine because we want to take care of sick people. We care about people. And yet, for so many of us in primary care, 80% of people who walk through the door are suffering from these chronic lifestyle diseases that get worse, and they die, right? And we can slow down the rate at which our diabetics go blind and lose their lower limbs and go on dialysis, but it's really not. We want to have that lay of hands moment. Someone jumps out of a wheelchair, that kind of thing. And that's what lifestyle medicine can really give us when these people actually treat the underlying cause of their disease, of their type 2 diabetes, and all of a sudden get healthier. I mean, that's why we went into medicine. Actually, patients getting healthier. That's exciting. Being able to do things they never thought they'd be able to do, right? Entire families eating healthier, living healthier. I mean, I think that is some of the most exciting things. We have reversal data on, high blood pressure and inflammatory bowel disease and type 2 diabetes and obesity and heart disease, early stage prostate cancer, all sorts of really exciting things. And so that's the kind of stuff I would highlight to really excite practitioners about lifestyle medicine. It's not just, preventive medicine. The difference between lifestyle medicine and preventive medicine is, preventive medicine is using, lifestyle behaviors, exercise, etc., to prevent disease. But lifestyle medicine, not only prevention, but treating disease without drugs, without surgery, with some of these lifestyle interventions. And that's what really sets us apart. And that's something I think we could really highlight to excite people about, either moving their practices completely over or at least incorporating some of these tools into their day-to-day practice.
I love this. Thank you. We have a question from Jennifer. She asks, what are your thoughts on weight loss medications like Ozempic and Mounjaro?
Yeah, wow. I just finished a book on these drugs, which will be out next month, actually. So excited about it. We're going to be translating the whole thing into Spanish, as everything on Nutrition Facts is. The bottom line basically is that, obesity so dramatically decreases one's lifespan, reducing life expectancy as much as, 6 or 7 years, that like bariatric surgery, these drugs should be considered as the last resort for those unwilling or unable to treat the cause of their obesity, right? The problem is people eat too much crap. So anything that gets them to eat less crap can be beneficial, but we don't, need to, rearrange our, digestive tract, go under the knife. We don't need $1,000 drug to decrap our diet. And the drug mechanism, this GLP-1 agonist activity, can be replicated with the consumption of thylakoids, which are basically dark green leafy vegetables, high fiber foods like whole grains, legumes, can result in the production of postbiotics like butyrate that can have a GLP-1 boosting effect and appetite suppressing effect. It's kind of, perverse that, that big food addicts people to junk food on purpose for profit. And then we, fatten the coffers of big pharma to treat at high cost and some risk an array of health problems that really need never to have occurred in the first place.
Wow, thank you. Ines is asking about vegetables that are not organic. Do they have less nutrients, or not?
So I actually have videos talking about both the safety and nutrient content of organic foods, and it's very, very it differs by nutrient. So if you're talking about nitrates, talking about polyphenols, talking about various vitamins, minerals, and in different crops. These are difficult studies to do because different crops can be grown under different conditions. But when we actually do really controlled studies, you can see differences, and they go both ways. And so if you're interested in a particular nutrient, you can look it up, but they really don't vary by much. Certainly not enough to justify the greater cost in terms of nutrients per dollar or per peso. But of course, there are other benefits to organic methods of food production beyond just the nutrient intake, there's avoidance of pesticides, the impact on the farm workers, on the soil, and all sorts of other things. But in terms of nutrient, I was surprised to see there was not even a general trend. It's not like, well, most minerals are greater than others. The data is all over the place, depending on the nutrient, depending on the crop.
Would you say that having pesticides, the toxicity does increase in a way that the price difference does make a difference?
Well, so again, How Not to Die, I talk about this modeling study that was done here in the States that suggests that if half of people in the US eat a single serving of fruits or vegetables every day, we would prevent an extra serving every day would prevent every year 20,000 cases of cancer, right? That's how powerful produce is. But because they were talking about conventional fruits and vegetables, pesticide-laden fruits and vegetables, the additional pesticide burden on the US population, if they were to do that, would cause 10 cases of cancer. So overall, we would just prevent 19,990 cases of cancer, right? That gives you a sense of the tremendous benefit of eating fruits and vegetables versus the tiny bump in risk. Now you say, wait a second, why accept any risk at all and choose organic? Great, but we should never let concern about pesticides prevent us from stuffing our face with as many fruits and vegetables as possible.
Great answer. Thank you so much. I was listening to a podcast this morning. You were talking about when when smoking started decreasing in the U.S. since 1964, after they had 7,000 papers proving that it was not good for you. And you made this reference that we now have enough evidence about our nutrition, but still the trend doesn't really revert. What can we learn from the politics and the media advertising buzz that happened over the past decades with smoking that we can learn now, so as not to take this long to change and revert the trend?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important historical example, because there were literally decades of science starting back in the 30s associating with lung cancer with smoking. And so for decades, the science was very clear in one direction, yet all of society, the government, the medical profession, the media was all in the other camp. There was the same kind of disconnect we see here with diet, right? And so and the reason back then, I mean, there's many reasons, one of which is that most physicians themselves smoke cigarettes. The average per capita cigarette consumption in the US is 4,000 cigarettes a year. The average person walking around smoked half pack a day on average. So most physicians smoke cigarettes. So you can imagine, and so the American Medical Association was telling people that smoking on average was actually good for you in moderation, right? So very similar kind of echoes of what we hear today. And of course, most physicians today continue to eat foods that are contributing to our epidemics of dietary disease. So it's so hard for us. You can imagine a smoking physician, how difficult that is for them to internalize that information, be able to convey that to their patients. Well, the same thing, if you just ate a burger for lunch, it's harder for you to, to not have that cognitive dissonance so much that you can really express to your patients that they really need to cut down on certain foods. And indeed, eating a burger appears to cut one's life as short as smoking 2 cigarettes. So if it would not even occur to us to light up before and after lunch, maybe we should, choose the frijoles instead.
Yeah.
And so eventually, society caught up to the science. But how many people died? Millions of people died while there was this disconnect between the science and the mainstream practice of medicine. We see that similar disconnect today. The IARC, the official World Health Organization body that determines what is and is not cancer causing, years ago, Put forth that processed meat, bacon, ham, hot dogs, lunch meat, sausages, is a known human carcinogen, their highest classification level, group 1 carcinogen. Yet, you know, people are still giving them, you know, these to kids to take to school. I mean, we try not to smoke around our kids anymore. Yet, what are we sending them to school with? Increasing risk of actually very similar, 18% increased risk for every 50 grams of processed meat a day, very similar to the increased risk of lung cancer of living in a home with a smoker in terms of secondary smoke, lung cancer risk. And, you know, for non-smokers, the number 1 cancer killer is colorectal cancer. That's our number 1 threat if we're not smokers. And so, I mean, this is, but yet why is this not, why aren't there warning labels? Why isn't the Centers for Disease Control telling people not to eat processed meat? Why is it still being served in schools? So again, we have the science, we have the solid science on one hand, yet the policy hasn't caught up. Eventually, we would hope that it would catch up. But until then, how many people have to die? And so that's why I see our roles as just getting that information out there. And at first, I think naively, I thought, well, that's what the internet's going to do, right? Once there's this democratization of information, before the tobacco industry could really control the message. They controlled the media so they could control the message. They controlled the doctors. They gave a $10 million check to the AMA. So the AMA came out against the Surgeon General's report against smoking. But they can't do that anymore. Information, they'd have no control over information. And I thought naively that the truth would rise to the surface, right? But of course, as we see with the internet, oh my God, it seems the reverse. Like the most bullshit rise to the surface, like the craziest flat earth theories rise to the surface, and the truth gets buried even further. And so that was really a sad wake-up call for me. And so really is, you know, taking a step back and thinking, what can we do in our own communities to get this life-changing, life-saving information into people's hands?
Yeah, we're in a planetary cognitive dissonance.
Indeed. Unfortunately, I've got to run to my next interview. It's been so wonderful. I'm so excited about what you're doing. Please let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help.
Michael, thank you. Hopefully we have you next year to have Mexican frijoles, the best in the world.
Excelente.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank
De
you,
nada.
Marco. Have a nice day.
Gracias a todos por haberse conectado. Si tienen más preguntas, por favor háganoslas llegar y trataremos de contestarlas a través del equipo de Michael. Es una persona demasiado ocupada y bueno, nos regaló estos 30 minutos, así es que ya tengo aquí 2 preguntas que vamos a tratar de contestar y se las haremos llegar. Y bueno, pues a sus órdenes, espero vernos pronto en el próximo Congreso Mexicano de Medicina Estilo de Vida del 21 al 23 de octubre en la Ciudad de México. Mariana, no sé si quieras agregar algo.
Pues nada, gracias por conectarse, gracias por estar en este valioso espacio que el doctor Michael Gregory nos compartió. Si no han visto el video de la presentación, la verdad es que es de mucho aprendizaje del libro de How Not to Age, les recomendamos mucho verlo y pues ojalá nos podamos ver en octubre todos por ahí. Un abrazo y gracias por estar.